Well, my name is Adam, aka Habstrakt. We're here in my home studio apartment to discuss the release of my upcoming album Heritage, which is coming tomorrow, the March 31st, on Friday. And welcome home. The inspiration behind making a full album was that I wanted to kind of detach myself from what I would call feeding the beast, which is just, putting out singles after singles. And I felt like, in this electronic music industry, a lot of what we do now is just treated as content. And so I wasn't really having much fun, making singles after singles, especially when you're a dance music artist where like everything you put out has to be such a club-tailored, DJ-oriented types music, and banger. And like after a while, I was kind of feeling like my juice is running a little stale, and I've been making so much different stuff over the years, so much different approach to music, so much different genres, and such a wide creative process that I wanted to kind of tie everything together and tell a bit of a story, right? And tie all those elements together and find a continuous, line and story to tell. And so that was the creative process behind all the inspiration. And what really inspired me to go ahead of the process was moving into this place where we're standing now and building this recording studio that you're seeing and creating a hyper creative space for myself where I have all those equipment that I can use, and I have, a good place to feel good and have all the mind space I needed to really let the creative juices flow, basically, and go through the whole project. The name of the album Heritage definitely ties into a little bit of that French heritage for sure. To me, Heritage was about family. It was about my nieces, my nephews, and all the people I have in France, and was about, I don't even know if I'm saying that I'm doing this for them, but it was about what I'm leaving behind me. And again, I think it ties back to what I said earlier, where I feel like I wasn't doing something that was really meaningful. I wasn't really making art anymore, or at least I was making it, but I wasn't really organizing it in a way that tells a story. And so I picked that name because I want it to be, my heritage, what stays behind me eventually. And I think as an artist, you're sort of seeking immortality. You're sort of trying to make something that's going to survive you, that's going to withstand the strength of time, And so that was the whole idea behind that. Another running title that I had in mind was Legacy, but I felt like it was a little too on the nose, and also heritage being a French word tied back to, again, my culture and my origins and everything like that. The creative process of the album was a challenging process, and there's been many breakthroughs, but the creative process on itself was a huge challenge because it was written over mostly the last year. Some ideas were started earlier, but most of the album was written over the last year, and I was touring a huge amount. I was playing a lot of shows every weekend, which was a blessing, but I was really struggling to maintain both a professional life and a personal life, while also Monday to Friday having to still be creative and write music and maintain, social medias and everything, while also maintaining a personal life, a private life, a social life with friends, with my girlfriend, with keeping in touch with my family that lives on the other side of the world. And so the whole creative process has been on itself a challenge, right? Taking on such a large amount of work when, making just a single can be already draining sometimes. That in itself was a challenge. That being said, it came with a huge sense of reward, realizing that, wow, I did it, it's there. And once it was finished, and I got the masters back, and I got to sit down and listen to it and show it to some people in an early version, came the reward aspect of it. And so I would definitely take on challenges like that again and again, just because of that sense of reward that comes with it, But definitely, touring intensively while trying to maintain a creative process, while trying to maintain a personal life, was like tying all those three elements together and keeping myself together and not getting too burnt out was pretty essential. I did get a little burnt out last year, I'm not gonna lie. Around October, November, I was really kind of losing it a little bit, and I took time off. I put all my energy towards finishing this, and again, really happy, really proud of how it came together and how I managed to finish it, Being in the music industry for 10 years, one thing that I really learned that's the most important is you have to constantly adapt. You have to keep up with what's new, what's fresh. You have to listen to the youth. I think culture is defined by the youth, right? You have to listen to what the new crowds are listening to, what they want to do, what media do they use. You have to adapt to all the new stuff. You can't let yourself ever be, a boomer, like, oh, I don't use TikTok or anything like that, So stuff that I hear sometimes where I'm like, you have to embrace everything that's new and that's coming. And so adapting is a great way to, to keep having fun as well. It's really, when you've done that for that long, you'll tend to repeat the same process again and again and tend to expect a different result. And it's kind of like baking. You can't just use the same ingredients and same recipe and expect a different cake at the end. You always have to like see what you can improve, what you can incorporate, what you can remove that's not necessary anymore. And so really the most important thing is to constantly try to explore, be attentive to what's out there, be attentive to the newcomers, the new people coming in. Never let that cloud your vision. Embrace everything, that's about it, and see what you can learn. And there's always something new to be learned. There's always something new to kind of revive the flame that you can have for stuff. Again, keeping love and passion alive for over a decade of doing the same thing is extremely hard, especially once it becomes, your job and you have the whole financial responsibility involved, which is something we don't like to talk about. But it's very important to talk about it, right? How do you stay alive with something that also, puts food on the table and pays rent and everything, especially when I've had a really, not very rich upbringing. So for me, it was very important to constantly think about that. How am I going to survive through, whole life and everything? And so when you kind of add all the stress, very quickly you lose the love and you just turn into autopilot. And for me, that was essentials that I never do that. The moment I turned my brain into autopilot was the moment my creative juices were dead, and I would never want that to happen. And so I've always worked hard in keeping that alive by, again, listening to what's around me, seeing what's exciting, what makes people excited. And if I don't understand, take the time to really look at it, see every aspect of it, and then understand why it's so popular, exciting. Right. What you see here is my modular synthesizer. It's a system that I've been building for the last 6 years. So that didn't just happen overnight. Each one of those modules been bought and researched independently over the years. I've had to sell a lot of anything else that I own in my life, from my clothing to valuable stuff, just to finance this. And at first I was kind of treating it like a little sound design synthesizer, you can patch the way you want. And slowly it evolved into a full-on groove box. So a groove box, you can do samples on it, you can do drums, you can do synthesizers, you can sequence melodies that it's going to replay and everything. And the way I've been using that, especially on the album process, is that, and tying back to what I was talking about earlier, was how do you keep, how do you stay excited about making music after all those years? And when you always just start with a blank page on your software, Ableton. For me, I had really reached a point where I couldn't start from a blank page anymore, so I kind of have to, and I've always loved making remixes, because I think remixes give you those bits and bobs to start with, and then it kind of gets the ball going, and then you can just go on with your, working into the computer. So for me, it was like, how do I create a situation for myself where I end up remixing myself, right? And so I created this, and I took a lot of work and research again, and budget and everything, just to create this machine where I'll start any ID. And like right now I have a very simple doodle beats that I've made, over the last few days that I've been working on, and it usually starts with like some drums, I could make a whole drum beat on it, and then I could add, vocal samples that I can chop and anywhere I want and everything like that. And then I could just keep going, adding like adding full synthesizers to it. And then I just keep building and building, right? And I can add more, like an extra lead on it. And so that made the whole process really fun again, because I could just jam on this. I create an idea like this, and I'll jam on it for hours on end until it's like perfect. And when it's perfect, I'm able to tap the signal out of this using all those separate outputs that I send into the computer here. And what you can see is I have a session going. where I can record everything that's going on separately, right? And now you have all those stems that are being recorded, and I can stop the music and then I can switch. It always sort of works like that, where I start here, I have fun. When I get something that, you know, gets my juices going, and I'm like, wow, this could be an actual song. It goes back into the computer, and now I have it where I can have all the sounds separated. Just the bass line, just the drums, right? And so it's really great because it allows me to like create those ideas, but not just let them die, and not just record like a jam, but really extract all the individual sounds and make loops and everything. And so that has been really a huge part of my creative process on the album, was that a lot of it was just made dancing in the room and standing there and having so much fun and tweaking stuff. And I'm like, wow, okay. And there's no need of like, oh, should I record this? It's already being recorded. The moment I have something good, record is pressed, and sometimes I have sessions that are, you know, an hour too long that I have to go back to. Like, what was that one moment where I did that one crazy thing? And so the whole creative process revolves around that, right? Is making something that makes me really vibe and really gets me excited, transcribing it to something that's usable as a piece of work, right? And then going into the computer and turning it into a proper piece of music that respects the codes, the amount of bars that a DJ needs to fade in the track in and out, the intro, the build-ups and everything. Stuff that you would be very fastidious to do on this. This is more for like making really cool loops that you can make evolve and everything and stretch, but you can't really, you could sequence the whole track on it, but it'd be another extra level of sequencing and everything. And so I use that as it's my music machine to start ideas basically, and it really changed my whole creative process, and it's been incredibly fun to use. A lot of those, like I said, are bought individually. A lot of them are soldered as well. You can buy them as kits to save a lot of money. So I spent a lot of time downstairs soldering everything, which is something I've always done, you know, a lot of circuit bending, which leads to very interesting creation, like this little guy that you see here that I made very popular online, the Hello Kitty Cassettone, which is a cassette player, right? So you have a cassette here on which I record a sound, and then I mapped the speed of the record player to those knobs that can change the speed of them, and each one of the keys on the keyboard activates the tape, and so you can kind of decide, and you can play it as a keyboard, you can tune every note. Right. And so that was another kind of worm that recently I opened. I think over the last year, I was like, well, I can solder stuff. I can build instruments of my own. I can modify those to be even more interesting. You see that on that chord synthesizer here, which is an MS-20 it's an old Korg from the 70s, actually, one of the very first semi-modular that Korg did. And same thing, I went into it, I drilled an extra, I wanted this button to be able to be modulated and not do it by hand, so I went inside of it, I found it on the PCB. And so I've always been modifying, you know, equipment like that to have fun. And it all kind of ties up together really well, you know, you spend time working on something, you build it with your own hands, and then you can use it and turn it into an actual record. For me, that was incredibly exciting. Another cool stuff about here is the sequencer I made the Mala song with, you know. This is a little kit that you buy online, and you have to solder all the components yourself, so all those little points. And I just sequenced the melody, and this is a little keyboard. You can see your white keys, your black keys. I just sequenced the melody on this. I posted a video where you see me do that. And so again, it's just all part of like making the whole process exciting and fun again. And I don't really see it as a necessity. Like I'm not, if a producer comes to me and asks me for advice on how to produce music, I'm never going to be like, buy modular synthesizer. Don't do that. This is a rabbit hole. It will consume all your money and life and energy. But for me, it works. But sometimes I also get a little jealous of people that are still very happy just working on the computer and the software. But I needed to add a bit of an external force and presence into the creative process, and I'm very, very satisfied with the emotion that this procures me, you know, and what comes out of those machines is absolutely incredible, and it's got a spirit of its own, you know. A lot of the album is based on what's called the Krell. The Krell It's one of the very first patches in modular, which was based off the soundtrack of a 1956 movie. And the Krell are this race of aliens, and it's their language basically. And so the concept is that you're gonna patch synthesizers in a way that is gonna play itself, and each note is gonna randomize the next one. So you don't know what's about to happen, and so it sounds very alien-y. But what I did to that is that I added a quantizer to put into, like, for example, here we have a minor harmonic scale, and so suddenly it becomes melodic. And you can have all those really... And see, just like that, I just played a bunch of notes that I can pick up and make something out of it. Another example is how I make a lot of my leads. And so those notes are all like always improvising themselves. I can't predict what it's gonna go next and what it's gonna do. I could just record it and like try to make the best of it at the end, right? And a lot of that was really, really inspiring for the album. Was that, okay, I'm gonna let the machine think for itself, you know? And I do like, it's kind of like doing a Turing machine test, where like, can you tell if someone played that, or is it a human or a machine? Are you talking to a computer, or are you talking to a human, right? And funny enough, one of the big, components of this patch is called a Turing machine. And so that's that, that's the whole, the big energy behind the album was to work on that, and a lot of it is, there's entire songs on the album that have been entirely written by this machine. And I'm not saying I wrote it on the machine, I'm saying the machine wrote it for me. Right. The collabs on the album was mostly me reaching out to those people, to Mala, to Plastic Toy, Hotel, Roderick Porter, Noon and everything. It's mostly me reaching out to people. I'm a very, very annoying artist to collab with. I start a lot of collabs with people that never saw the light of day, because it's part of my creative process. Things are either amazing and the best, or it's the worst thing ever and it's trash and it's being discarded. And so whenever I stay in that in-between phase, which is 95% of my creative process, a lot of people tend to be like, so is it done? Can we put it out? Can we finish it? I'm always, if I have the slightest doubt over something, I'll discard it. And so a lot of my creative process is like that. And so I reached out to a lot of people for the album, and I started a lot of collabs that didn't make it, make the cut at the end. One of the favorite collabs on the album was definitely Roderick Porter working on Outer Space. I found this guy on TikTok, impressed me with the energy he has, how he makes his beats, from random sounds that he finds, the lyrics that he writes, the whole energy behind the persona that he has, the way he dresses, like the whole guy. I was just such a fan. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, you never made an electronic music song. I have a house record and I want some vocals on it. And he was like, wow, I've never done this before. Let me try it. The next morning he sent me vocals. The first take was perfect. I never had to be like, change this or that. The record was perfect, the quality of the vocals, everything. And so he gave me this, and that was such a huge contribution to the record. And most of the collabs, I'm going to say actually all the collabs on the album happened that way, which is, it happened very fast. And the wow, this is the greatest thing on earth kind of feeling was there from the beginning and stayed throughout the whole creative process. The song with Hotel Call Me was the same thing. She sent me a bunch of vocals and I started the beat and we were instantly so excited about it. The track with Mala, same thing. He sent me a really rough idea that I kind of started to sketch out and kind of made on the analog thing that you sing over there. And from there, it was finished within, just a few days. All those collabs were pretty quick, The one with Plastic Toy took a little bit more work. We were really trying to push ourselves on the sound we used, and because it's more of a classic house track, and it's very easy to be complacent with those and using just, I have a classic organ house song preset from, all those classic tunes, and that's cool. I was like, no, let's push further. Let's take everything back to the ground bass and just like rework everything. And so took a little longer, but all of the creative process was with the collaborators has been such a smooth journey, and it's been really, really good, and we're all very excited about the release tomorrow for sure. The album art is it's a picture of my living room downstairs, and it's a bunch of drawings and doodles that I started doing on the iPad, And the story behind that is that, I've always been really into tattooing. I've been getting a lot of tattoos myself, and I was getting incredibly frustrated with tattoo artists and the designs that they would make, or like either the execution wasn't good or the design wasn't like fully how I wanted. And then I realized that I could just, like everything else in my creative process, when I'm not satisfied, I'm just only a couple tutorials away from learning how to do it myself. This is how I end up, making like visuals and soldering stuff, and because it's always like, oh, someone's gonna do it, but it's never always gonna be the way I want it, so I'll do it myself. So the whole creative process behind the artwork was a way for me to honor that. And so when COVID happened, we're all at home, all the tattoo shops are closed. I'm bored out of my mind. I need a new hobby. And so I picked up on, drawing flashes and everything. Then quickly on, I was like, I'm just going to tattoo myself. So I started, tattooing my chest, my arms, my legs. My whole legs are just a practice field. And then I got, my license to, get things properly, by the book. And I started tattooing friends around and everything. Running a bit of a clandestine shop myself sometimes, I won't lie to you. And so everything ties into it in the way that it's just me being all of that and doing all those things at once and letting everything flow. And as you can see right now, I have my synth down on one side that's like playing, and just flip a switch and you have some drums playing, but at the same time my iPad is here, the visuals are there, and I can just glitch them on the screen. And so it's all like kind of together. And the idea was that I always try to tie all those universe into one single vision. And for me, I'm very inspired by, black work, brutalism, architecture and everything. And so I just kind of let it happen in a way, right? It's just the way I work now, where I'm like, oh, if I could be making music, but at the same time have kind of start sketching an idea that represents it and everything. And I'll put down the screen next to it and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then that's how I'm going to video as well, but that's another story. But the album art, at first I was, trying to design something in Photoshop, all those softwares and everything, until I realized that I've been printing all my favorite drawings for the longest time, all of them. Some I have made into tattoos, some haven't, and I've been printing them. I also, like you said, learn how to stencil, which is very inspired by obviously the street art, Banksy and all that stuff. And I realized that I had all those framed out right there, and all I needed to do was just take a picture of it. Right? Instead of photoshopping the whole process, I just realized I could just show it as raw as it is. And again, I think that ties back to what the album is. It's very raw and it's very unapologetic, and it's just like my pure artistic vision and expression, completely unfiltered. And so taking just a picture of that and making sure it's just square, and that was enough. And then I saw the picture process, put it black and white, and I was like, wow, this is it, I'd spend like 2 weeks on Photoshop trying to make an art. Where do I put the text? Where do I put the title? Which font? And I was like, I don't even need to put the text or the title on it. And that's why there's no text on the artwork as well. And so again, to me, I think it all naturally ties up together. It's hard to explain. It's just part of the creative process. And the moment I started to open this kind of worms of visual. After that, it was like, what's next? Oh, live visuals. And now I'm doing my own live visual. And then what's next? Oh, I could do my live visuals from my drawings. And then I'm like, wow, I can actually do that using analog equipment like I'm doing here. Wow. And then I can solder my own, doodles myself and make my own circuit bend videos with regular battery powered, stuff. And it's always like that. I find a new rabbit hole and I just go into it, while also keeping up with, making music and everything. The whole thing kind of flows naturally for me. It's part of what I mentioned earlier, but always never stop learning. I'll wake up every morning and I'll spend an hour on YouTube, be like, let's pick a topic, any topic, and just learn about it. And that's been something that I've done for the last 10 years. Every morning I wake up and I watch a tutorial for an hour. It's like a ritual for me, I think heritage fits into my trajectory in the way that it completely changed my creative process and really made me fall in love again with what I'm doing. Again, like I said, you do this for a while and you tie all the stress and expectations to it. It's really hard to stay excited about what you're doing. And this album opened a new world for me, and opened a new world where I can like really show the full extent of what I do on all the different levels. Visually, musically, I can put songs in the middle that I don't even have drums, because I love ambient, but it's not like you can release an ambient single when you're making dance music, right? And so the album changed everything for me in the way that I I assume who I am and what I do a lot more. And I think moving forward, I will keep using that way of making music, which is, create larger bodies of work with an actual story to tell. He opened the way to the second album, to really make the answer very short. My first album is opening the door to the second one and the third one and the fourth one. It's the whole creative process was so exciting, so interesting, and so inspiring that I don't see myself stopping and going back to my old ways after that, for sure. This is the original art for Outer Space, and the album cover is basically, I just put it on this wall, took a picture of it, and that was the album cover. Vision, same concept, just a barbed wire that I drew, and I just took a picture of it, spray painted it, took a picture of it here. And initially I wanted the album cover to happen on this wall, where I was like, oh, each one of them gonna go there, 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 and then I realized that everything was already set up over there. So I invite you to follow me into the living room, where you will see the rest of it. I mean, yeah, it's what I talked about the album cover earlier, is that I was doing all of it on Photoshop, then I realized that most of my art was already on the wall here. And same thing with the canvases over there. I was like, do I bring them here? And I just really like the view here of what I put together. Those two over there on the end of the wall are not for me. They're from a couple of friends, they gift. So I removed them from the art, and those two as well. But the album cover was basically just a picture of that wall here that you see. And I think it was the easiest way to do it. And also now it kind of serves as a timepiece. I'm always gonna look at it, and I'm always gonna see the art piece here. Isn't that right? You like the album art? There's a few tracks that are very specific to me in the album. There's a few tracks that are very special. One might surprise, I think, people. It's that song called Just Like the Rest of Us, which again has no drums. And this track's very interesting because I wanted to do a track that was an entire live take. So I wrote the melody on the computer, and the computer was sending notes into this machine. And the whole song is just, I press record, I press play, and I have to tweak all the parameters live. Usually I use this machine to start ideas and draft that end up in the computer, and they're being modified, looped, and I keep this section, and then I built a whole song from there. This time I really recorded the whole record on this. There's a video on my TikTok where you actually see me make the initial patch for that. And so it was a huge challenge. It might sound like such a simple record, but getting all the intricacies of it and the little nuances in the sound live, which is like you have to tweak this and this and that and everything. And then I was like, I need a third hand. Like, I think there's literally a moment where I'm like both hands, and I'm like with my nose trying to spin this guy over there just to like get it right. And then the amount of like thing where I was like, am I using my hands? Can I automate this using another patch point and everything? So this record is probably the simplest in terms of the sound, and yet one of the most complex I've ever made, just because I wanted something that was done live, right? So Just Like the Rest of Us, very important to me. And I'm pretty obsessed with the song Call Me, I did with Notel, which is a very dark baile funk record with very, very dark and sexy lyrics, and it's got a very freaky aspect to it and very surprising. I think most people are not going to expect a record like that. It's very interesting creative process where like I had the initial idea, it was good, and I just kept taking it darker and darker and darker and weirder, and like I remember Notel being like where is this going? This keeps getting better, but like we could put it out now and it'd be amazing, but I know we can keep going. And so it was like I kept refining it. It's like it was like droning it more and more into darkness and fully assuming that dark vision, and that's a very interesting record on the album for sure. The tour so far has been absolutely amazing. We started that in Europe for 20 days. I did a bunch of shows at home in France. It was incredible because, with COVID that happened, and also with me, moving to America, having to put all my focus in America for the longest time, I haven't had much opportunities to play in France. And then you look back and you haven't played a show in some cities in 5 years, 6 years, and it's my country, it's my culture, my people. So it was incredible to go back and have those sell-out, packed, crazy venues with mosh pits on the dance floor, people singing every song like, bah, 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 like knowing all the melodies you're playing and getting so excited. it was incredible that I spent that much time away and I come back and the response is so crazy and people have never left, the ship, and they are bigger fans than ever. I think it was a very, very good idea to start there to give me like all that energy and motivation, and now I'm like just so ready for the rest of the tour, right? I've only done one weekend in the US so far, which was the past weekend, Philadelphia and Minneapolis, and those shows were incredible, right? And this tour kind of conveys the whole vibe that I'm trying to bring with the album, which is a lot of dark stuff happening, and it's just very energetic. The show that I do, my set goes a lot harder than the album does. To be honest with you, I like to play really angry stuff. There's a lot of remixes and edits of the songs of the album that have turned into an even more dance-oriented versions, and so it's very bassy, very energetic, and there's also a lot of very trippy, weird, artsy moments and beats, and so I've tried to be as unapologetic as I could on those sets, and it so far is going well. Again, I feel like I'm just so motivated and excited after how crazy the response was in France and in Europe in general. Every week I'm gonna kind of make an edit of one of the songs and have a new dance floor club version to propose. And so I'm hoping by the end of the tour I'm gonna have like the whole album. I'll have remixes of everything, several remixes even, which I already have on all of those records. And I love the process of having a tour that's kind of organized, as grouped as a bunch of dates, rather than just going at it every weekend. Be like, this is the end point, this is the start point, this is the end point. Because it gives me a bit of structure and it gives me goals to accomplish. And so the goal for me on this tour is to do that, is to reinterpret the album and turn even more into, bring it to the clubs, while keeping the vision fully alive. The message, I guess, my album is trying to tell, I think is, at the same spirit of the message I've always tried to convey, which is, I don't really have much to say. My music speaks to myself volumes. And I think with this album, it's speaking even louder. And I've always kind of loved, letting the art speak for myself a lot more. This is also why I haven't done interviews for many years. I refused every single interview. Because I just didn't want to talk about it, and I felt like people will get the message, and if I ever want to have a bigger message, I will start singing, I will start making lyrics myself, and I don't. So, the big message doesn't necessarily have words with me. It's a feeling process. I felt like I've made sure that everyone would kind of find something that they can relate to and they can feel in their own ways and make it theirs, and tie it to their own memories and moments of their own life, the way the creative process was for me. And yeah, just like always, I make very visual work that doesn't have words. I make very instrumental music that doesn't have words, and it's all a feeling process. Yeah. And I think that's important for me.